live streaming today with three people that are interested and have something to share that will be interesting to you around growth, that personal growth, that company growth from the inside out. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And our guests, Jay and Kelly and Luke, I can't wait to hear what they have to say. And like most of our live streams, we will start. They were going to answer a question for us. And then we're going to open up the discussion. So for those of you who are tuning in to this live, go ahead, ask your questions. Go ahead, participate through the chat, and I will incorporate those into our conversation as we go. So without further ado, let's do a quick introduction for each of you. I want to know who you are, what you're up to these days, and what you do as part of your introduction. All right, Jay, take it away.
I'm Jay Haynes, the founder and CEO of Thrive. We provide jobs to be done, software training, and services for companies looking to help accelerate their growth through investment in their product roadmaps.
Thank you, Jay, and welcome, Kelly.
Yes, great to be here, Jess. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Kelly Henry. I am a retired chiropractor. I practiced for 20 years, and I pivoted back in 2018. I am now a business coach, specifically working with small businesses to help them retain more of their customers, to drive up profits and growth of their business. And the mechanism behind that is providing stellar customer service.
Fantastic, Kelly. Thanks so much. And Luke, welcome.
Good morning, Jess. Great to be here. I'm Luke Lehman. I'm a former Air Force fighter pilot and now a business owner and investor. I'm a CEO of an aerospace and defense company, and I invest in businesses that are service-oriented from $500,000 to $5 million.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, each one of them has a really cool skill that you may or may not get to learn during our live stream today. But guess what? You will when you are listening to their uncut interviews with me that are going to be coming out. And I have to say, those of you who are part of the Fast Track Your Business program, you are in for a treat. Those of you who are here and you're listening through the podcast and you're joining us on social media, you're in for a treat as well, because boy, do we pack everything that we do at the Bold Business Podcast with useful, valuable information to help you grow and expand and shift the way you think to achieve your goals faster and customized to the way that you show up, the way that you lead, and the way that you want to be in this world, supporting your customers, your stakeholders, your employees, everybody. That ripple effect there. So here we go. As far as the question of the day, it is, how does your company focus on one thing that it can do better than any other business? Now, I'm going to ask each of these gentlemen to answer it, and I'm going to be taking notes. You'll probably see my screen shake just a little bit as I'm taking notes, because we're going to use that in the discussion part of our conversation as well. So, Jay, I want to know how your company focuses on the one thing that it can do better than other businesses in your field.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jasper, thanks for having me too. So we focus on what's known as jobs to be done innovation. And what does that mean? Well, the basic idea behind it is that your customers are actually not buying your product. What they're doing is hiring your product to get a job done. And there's tons of examples of this. We all switched from records and cassettes and CDs to then iPods, and now we use streaming services. So what happened there? Well, the products and services and technologies changed, but what the customer's trying to do, what's now known as their job to be done, hasn't changed at all. It's still to create a mood with music. And that's incredibly important if you're a company investing in a product roadmap, because building products and services is very expensive and risky. Companies are risking capital every day trying to build the right product roadmap to accelerate their growth. And if you build the wrong product, like the Microsoft Zune, you can lose a ton of money. In fact, Microsoft lost $300 million in one quarter alone. I assume no one here owned a Zune, maybe. But it was a huge investment by Microsoft that failed. And there's tons and tons of examples of that. So what we do is we help companies use this idea to understand where customers are underserved in the market. What are their unmet needs? Where is the biggest segment of really underserved customers who are willing to pay for new products and services? And you can see why these roadmap investment decisions are so critical. BlackBerry would be a great example. When the iPhone launched, people forget that BlackBerry was worth more than Apple. So BlackBerry went from basically a $50 billion market cap to effectively zero. And Apple went from about a $40 billion market cap to over $2 trillion. That is the power of understanding your roadmap. So what we do is we help companies understand where the market opportunities are from the perspective of their customer, not the perspective of their product. And that helps mitigate the risk of making investment in your product roadmap, because that investment, if it doesn't return in the form of revenue and profitability growth, you can end up like BlackBerry instead of Apple.
Thank you, Jay. Okay. All right, Kelly, you're up. Kelly, how does your company focus on the one thing that it can do better than any other business?
My take on this is my company and what I do as far as helping businesses create customer retention, and how I provide that service is through stellar customer service, and that's what I help my clients do as well. So I'm going to answer this question from two different perspectives, from my own and then from my customer. I like what Jay said on providing the proper product. You can't have great customer service within a business if your product stinks, or if there's not a market for it, or there's a lot of things that a lot of logistics that go along with that. And that, just having the right product, the right service at the right time get you in the arena to play. Well, that's where I go above and beyond. And that's where I help my clients understand that, okay, I can't help you with that. That's up to you. I may have to partner with Jay on this, and we can have a mutual relationship with some of our clients, but I take them above and beyond and help them understand that providing great customer service is, in my estimation, going to be their biggest competitive advantage. And to understand that concept. And it's the reason you want to understand that and provide that is because then you retain more customers. And that's the key KPI, if you will, to exponential growth and profits for a business, is to provide that stellar service so you retain more customers, keep them coming back for more. They'll pay more. They'll tell their friends, family, colleagues, their acquaintance about you, so they continue to do business with you. That's what I did when I was in my chiropractic clinics and opened up multiple clinics. My goal was not to be the best chiropractor. My goal and what we did was to be known for our customer service that just happened to provide chiropractic services. And that's my goal with my clients, to help them understand that. Yeah, they provide a service, a product. Don't be known for that. Let's be known for the stellar service. And the way I teach it, the way I coach it, is not from a standpoint of trying to wow the customer, the client, the patient on a daily interaction. It's doing the simple things that create a sense of importance for the customer, making them feel valued each and every time they interact with a business. So the simple things done consistently is the key to providing that stellar service, to providing that great experience, and again, that drives up that retention rate for the average business.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Kelly. All right, Luke, I want to know from you, how does your company focus on one thing that it can do better than any other business?
I love the question, and I also really appreciate Jay and Kelly's responses as well. Mine's a little bit different because I'm actually going to take one and I'm going to expand upon it. And a lot of times for service-based businesses specifically that I work with, is that we focus on one key metric that we think the customer wants, when in actuality, that metric is a combination of three things. So when we go about creating our unique competitive advantage, it's the combination of three things that set yourself apart from your competitors. And a good example of that is when someone, and Kelly, we'll use your example there, when someone says we have great customer service, I come back and my answer is, yeah, but what about the other people in your market that also have great customer service? And I completely believe in the foundations of great customer service. And what happens all too often as entrepreneurs, especially early stage entrepreneurs, is they use price as a discriminator. So I have great customer service and discount rates. And I still say, yeah, but, because what you're now a commodity provider. So when we find those three unique competitive advantages, we're able to quantify, and as Jay described, we're able to set that product roadmap into place that cannot be beat. So when someone comes back and says, yeah, we have great customer service, but we also have an incredible money back guarantee, and we also have a 24-hour response rate, is you will not find anyone else in your market that can beat you on all three of those unique competitive advantages. But the real secret to how I do it as a CEO of my company is I get comfortable saying no. And as we say no more often, we find the things that we are uniquely good at, and we create more room and space for ourselves to say yes to those things. So at each stage of the business as an entrepreneur and CEO, what we need to realize is that we are, as much as we don't like it, the biggest impediment to the growth of our company. The size box that we think that we're in is as big as our customer can grow. And our business is only a reflection of us. So as we can expand our box and we can think a little bit broader and a little bit bigger and allow those three uniques to get bigger, we can continue to allow the company to grow doing what we are uniquely good at.
Thank you very much. So there is something that all three of you have in common that I'm going to just toss out there, because I think this will be a great way to open up the conversation, and I'll ask questions all day long. You already know that about me. I've interviewed you. Beyond that though, there's dialogue that we can have amongst ourselves too, a back and forth, a question from one of you. So don't be shy here. And I'm going to start with what I noticed, and I'm going to toss this out there and see if you think the same. Do you feel like a commonality in all three answers that you gave requires some sort of commitment to consistency?
I'll start, Jess, because I just love what Kelly's talking about there. And customer service to me is like the offensive line of business. And it's the blocking and tackling of business. And when you talk about consistency, as a lot of people grow, their business scales at a pace that they can't keep up with. And customer service is one of those first things to go. So how do we do this as entrepreneurs? We become the person that goes out there and does everything, right? With the sales and with the operations, with the delivery, the accounting, all that stuff. And then we begin to scale. And what do we likely become the chief salesperson inside our company, right? Because we can generate revenue better than anyone else. But what goes oftentimes is that great customer service. So if you were to go back to our original statement, if you were to have one of those pillars of your unique competitive advantage is great customer service, is how do you set the foundations inside the culture of your company? And, Kelly, I'll, turn it over to you in the form of a question, is how do we create those concrete systems inside our company so that I can hire someone off the street and they can have that same level of dedication to our customer service as a pillar of the success of our business?
Yeah, that's a great question, Luke. And I appreciate what you said there about having the three factors with a business, great customer service and then a guarantee. To me, that all falls under customer service. But yeah, you have to have all those ducks lined up, so to speak, in order to create that competitive advantage. So I love that. I was taking notes while you were talking that first segment there. So the quickest, easiest, well, I shouldn't say easiest, but the quickest way to create the customer service that you want and that is consistent and that becomes a competitive advantage is what we're doing right here, is talking from inside out. You build a culture. You build a culture inside that business that is a team culture, that the employees feel valued, important, and special in order to convey that to the customers. That is the key component. That is job number one when I'm hired by a client, for us to go in there and reorganize, redo, put together, reestablish, firm up, whatever the case may be, the internal culture. And it's not a surprise that some of the biggest businesses in the world, i.e. Disney, have that done to a T. They don't hire the happiest people off the street, teenagers or college age students, to come in that are, bubbly personalities. They hire these they do have a stringent hiring process, but then they stick Disney culture in these individuals. So when you go to the Disney theme parks, you feel like it's the happiest place on earth. And there's a reason behind that, because it is well detailed. But again, that culture has to be established first. You can put whatever action you want, whatever steps you want, but if there's not a culture of great service where the employees feel it, it's impossible for them to sustain those actions and be consistent, like we just talked about, to be consistent, to provide that stellar service and make it a competitive advantage.
My favorite business in the world, Kelly, is an example of that's Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Is the two greatest words at Chick-fil-A and their culture is my pleasure.
Yep.
Is when you can check out every time and someone says authentically my pleasure, and they mean it. That's a great culture of customer service.
That's one of my models for my clients. When you can take 16-year-olds, and stick them in, and again, they put the Chick-fil-A culture in these individuals, where they are more concerned about the customer than they are about getting a paycheck. You can see it work pretty well through the Chick-fil-A franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would agree with Kelly and Luke. I think consistency is incredibly important, but I think one commonality between the three of us is customer centricity. That just companies that are putting the customer at the center of everything they're doing is really critical. And in Jobs to be Done, the method, the way that we actually think about not just consistency in what you're doing for your customer is customer effort. And it's a similar theme here, but it's actually a metric you can measure. So, and there's been a bunch of research published on this. A lot of companies measure satisfaction, or they'll measure net promoter scores, for example. I think we're probably all familiar with that. The problem with satisfaction, of course, is it's harder to gauge because it's not a specific metric like customer effort. And the problem with net promoter scores is net promoter scores just tell you about the current products, not what future products might be better. And that you need future products to generate growth, unless you happen to have one, hugely successful product like AdWords in Google's case. But for most companies, you really need to continue to invest in future products. So customer effort, you can really break down into two things: speed and accuracy. And that's what's powerful too, is you can then look at your customers' metrics. In other words, what you're trying to find is, how are the customers going to judge you? And customer effort, you can see this in all sorts of customer service, right? Who likes to call a company and sit on hold and wait for the response from the customer, service people? Like, nobody, right? It's a terrible experience. And you can measure that. You can measure how much effort it takes them to solve their problem. But you can actually do that for their products as well. And that's why when you're measuring customer effort, using speed and accuracy can be so valuable. And I'll give you the Zune iPod example as well, right? Microsoft thought, well, there's a huge market for iPods. Apple sold 200 million iPods at $150 a piece. That's a $30 billion market. That's big, even by Microsoft standards. That's a huge market. So they're Microsoft. They said, hey, we got a great team. We're smart. We have engineers, developers, marketers, tons of capitals. We have 1 billion customers using our operating system. So we'll just take 10% of that $30 billion market. And of course, they ended up with zero, because if you look at what the Zune did, it took the exact same amount of effort to get the job done, to create a mood with music, as it did with the iPod. It was no different. In fact, it had a podcasting feature, you may remember, ironically, on the Zune. And when you look at Pandora or streaming services, what did it take to create a mood with music? Well, you typed in Miles Davis or Indigo Girls or whoever you liked, and you instantaneously, by pushing play, had a mood with music. And so it was incredibly fast, and their algorithms were very, very good. It could tell what type of music you were in the mood for. So it was way faster and much more accurate. So just think of all the steps you had to go through to create a playlist on an iPod. You had to go to the store to find the song. You had to then buy the song. You had to download it and then sync it with your iPod. It was literally, you could measure it in minutes, if not hours. And so that's why speed and accuracy enable you to consistently create value for the customer. If you're doing something faster and more accurate than your competitors, you're going to likely take share.
I find that fascinating, especially how you tied it into the effort with which it takes to do that. speed and accuracy from the customer perspective, as well as the effort that you put into it. So even all those smart people, they missed a key piece of the anticipation. How does anticipating what's next, the metrics that you're using now, I guess how do those things actually help you? And we're at the time of the year where if some companies are already starting their 2022 planning, others will begin in the next 60 days, right? Somewhere in there. And this is a very pertinent question then. So let's talk about the anticipation piece. How do we use what we're measuring today to do a little bit of that anticipation, to understand how we're prioritizing and if we're prioritizing the right thing right now?
Yeah, great. I can take a shot at that. So the key starts with knowing what your customer's job is. What are they hiring the product to do? I mean, the obvious example, like something like an iPod, you're trying to create a mood with music. But this goes across consumer business or medical markets. So consumer markets, there's just tons and tons of jobs, starting with, having a baby. You need to get a baby to sleep through the night, all the way through planning for financial retirement. And then there's just, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And then in B2B markets too, if you look at B2B markets, you have businesses that are trying to achieve things like optimizing cash flow, which every business has to do, acquire customers, generate new leads, et cetera. Or you can get specific to industries. Luke, I know is our resident pilot here, and you can look at aviation. We've looked at aviation. So ensuring aircraft airworthiness is a job, et cetera. So you start with that premise that your customer has a job that's independent of your product. And then you can measure customer effort. Jobs are very, very, very complex. And they generally have 10 to 15 different steps and about 100 different customer needs. So you can run quantitative surveys to measure customer effort. You can literally ask them, how difficult is it for you to create a mood with music? How difficult is it for you to find a new song for the mood? Those kind of things. And then there's a little bit of quantitative technique in here, but you can then segment that population who struggles the most. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for those people who are pounding their head against the table because getting the job done is so difficult. They are willing to pay for some new solution. And you always want to do that kind of segmentation, because the broad market and the generally big market, there'll be a lot of people who are like, yeah, I like my iPod, it's good enough, right? There are a lot of people who are like, I like my BlackBerry, I'm just going to stick with this portable keyboard. Of course, they eventually all switch to iPhones or Android, keyboardless devices. So yeah, Kelly's right. Yeah. And so you want to find that segment, because that segment has a higher probability of generating growth. And that's what business investment in roadmaps and growth is all about: probabilities. Do you have a high probability or low probability of success? And those quantitative surveys really reveal just what customers are telling you. You can talk to your customers, of course, but you really want to get a sample of the market. That's how you can size how much growth you can really generate.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of what Jay just said, and I'm the dumbest one in the room here, so I'll admit that. So, but I always try to make things as simple as possible, not only for my own thinking, but then moving into with my clients. Jack Welch said the three biggest indicators for business were client surveys or customer surveys, employee surveys, and then what is the cash flow? And so that's what I deal with my clients. Now I'm more in the service-based businesses. That's my sweet spot for clients. So we talk about surveying the clients, the customers, the patients. Simple question, how would you rate our service? How would you rate our product? Scale of 1 to 10. If it's less than an 8, one more question: how can we improve it? What can we do better? Those type of things. Same thing with the employees. You want to understand where they are, how they feel like they're being treated, like we talked about a moment ago about the culture. How likely would you be to refer a friend to come work for us? Or how do you like working here at this company? Scale of 1 to 10, and then if it's less than an 8, what can we do better? How can we make it better? And then using those metrics to understand and to, like you said, Jess, to anticipate, to move forward more intelligently into the next year, into the next quarter, whatever the case may be.
I'll add. I think that's really important, Kelly. And service and customers via service businesses. About that, and just kind of how do we think forward about what demand signal our customers are going to have? And there's two business cases that come to mind. The first is a personal financial services. So a financial manager, Edward Jones guy, right? He's basically operating a franchise, his firm of his own, or bookkeeping service. There is not likely going to be a significant change in what our customers ask for. If I'm a bookkeeper, people are asking for reconciled books, right? So when I think about how I'm going to change my business to facilitate growth, there's only two ways for us to do that, right? We can acquire new customers, or we can add more services revenue from our existing customers. So increase the lifetime value, add more customers, add more dollars from the same customers. So when I think about that, if I'm looking forward about what I'm going to do to project growth into my company, the easiest, and Jay kind of hit on, I'm just going to ask them. I'm going to ask the existing customers that we have right now, what would also add value? If I did these things, if I did 3, 4, 5 of these 10 things, what would you find the most valuable? So if I'm a bookkeeper, if I'm going to come in there and keep your books, in addition to reconciling your books on a quarterly basis, how might I also add value? Maybe doing a sweep of my expenses. I'm just kind of making it up as I go along, but I'm going to ask them first and foremost about what specific services are going to add value for them. And then I'm going to bring that back in to go back to the original point of your question. I'm going to bring back that in to my 3 unique competitive advantages, and I'm going to make my box bigger. And the easiest question I can answer, this is a great question for the audience. If I had to charge 1/10 of what I'm charging right now, what would I do differently? And if I charged 10 times what I charge right now, what value would I need to put into my business? And those are the drivers that I look for so that I can raise my prices, get more, value out of my existing customer base, and then serve new customers as well.
And that leads into something 2 of you have talked about. Actually, all 3 of you talked about this in a way, is knowing what to leave out, knowing what to say no to. And Jack Welch also was like, rank everything in the last 25%, no matter what, always goes every so often. And so that's actually something where when we're talking about, well, how do we say no better? What do we say no to? When do we say no so that we can say yes to the right things more often? And I'd like to hear how that fits into this conversation from your viewpoints.
I'll start off on that topic. So again, this is how my mindset is: simplicity. So to Luke's point, where we get with the customer, I love that because that's important. Okay, here's 10 things that we could do. What would be most valuable to you if we provided those services? To some degree, I tried that in my chiropractic offices, although not that specific, and I didn't ever really ask them. I'd ask them, hey, this looks good. Let's try this angle. What helped me to exponentially grow my practices along with customer service was to minimize what I was doing. Do less, but do it with speed and accuracy. And do it better. Provide less, but do it very well and do it very consistently. And that's what helped me grow my practices exponentially, like I just mentioned. So I can see both sides of the coin. Now, if you don't provide extra services, you don't expand the box, like Luke was saying, yeah, you can limit and cap what what you're doing as far as your growth and your revenue. For me, I expanded my practices, added a new location, added doctors to these locations, so that helped me expand out. But we were very narrow focused and looked at just doing very specific things, doing very consistently, doing with speed and accuracy, and that's what helped my business.
Jess, I want to pile on there real quick because I think, Kelly, you said 2 things that are extremely important there. If we come back to this, the concept of the box, right? So a lot of times people say, let's think outside the box. It is physically impossible for you to think outside the box. But what is someone even like? How would I do that? Because if I do, I'm constrained by what's my box. So here's how I define the box. The bottom side of your box is your experience. The left side of your box is your emotional state with which you're approaching the box. The top of it is your value set, and the right side of it's your desired outcomes. All right, so we won't try to get into the lesson on the box. But the biggest way for me to expand my box is to think bigger. If I move my desired outcomes outside the right side of my box, is what do I have to do differently? And Kelly just hit on it. If I'm going to make a chiropractic office, and we'll use this as an example, but I would encourage the listeners, how to apply this into your business right now. If a chiropractic office can do $1 million in gross revenue on an annual basis, they're generally serving some component of a local audience, right, Kelly? I'm guessing, right? I'm not going to drive 40 miles to go to a chiropractor when there's another one that's 6 miles from me.
Exactly.
Same with veterinary.
Rare exception, but yeah, you're correct. I mean,
yeah, so I'm local.
Geographic area.
So how do I do that? I got to get another office, right? So people go, I can't grow my business to be a $10 million business. That is a constraint that you're putting on your business. So how do we do that, Jess, in our planning, and how do we think through that is you move the constraints. But that's why I can't physically think outside of my box, because once I've changed my desired outcomes or I've gained experiences, my box is just bigger. But I'm still not outside of my box. I'm still inside my bigger box. And that's what's beautiful about this is when we think about how do we grow our businesses, is you got to make your box bigger. And by being here and listening to people who have done it and made their box bigger, you are by default making your box bigger. You're expanding the bottom of it. But the second piece of that, Kelly, what's really germane to that is you have to, as an entrepreneur, create space for creativity inside your business. If you go from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with no white space in your day, you're an employee of your business. You have to create this space daily, weekly, monthly for you to be able to think creatively about how you're going to expand and think about those new challenges facing your business and what next year is going to look like different than this year.
That's good stuff. That's
yeah,
what right here, Luke, what you just said, man. That's expanding, stayed in box, just expanded that box, man. That's excellent.
Yeah, let me chime in with a little bit of an idea where you can try and think outside the box, and we can use Kelly's chiropractor's business as an example. So the way that we think about this with our customers, and we generally work with companies that are building product roadmaps, so they're actually building and launching products into a market, and those can be services too, but they're making a pretty big investment decision. And Jess, to answer your question, the most important thing is like you asked, what do you say no to? What are you not going to invest in? So clearly Microsoft would go back and say, let's not invest in the Zune, since I think they lost about $1 billion in it. So how could they have, thought outside the proverbial box? So the one way we think about it is think about your customers first. So sometimes we like to joke that our competitive advantage is actually we have no ideas. And we mean by that we have no product ideas, because we don't start with what the solution is. We start with what the customer is struggling with. So to use Kelly's chiropractor business as an example, so chiropractic is a solution to a health problem. You have a physical health problem. And I was saved by a chiropractor because I had some vertebrae out of my back, and it was for months I couldn't get it fixed. The day I walked in, 1 second he popped it back in. I felt 1,000 times better. So it's it's a great solution. And it's a solution to optimizing your health. So the way that you could think about it is you could say, okay, well, we're in the chiropractic business right now, and we charge a pretty high price. And to Luke's question of what if you charged 1/10 of that? The other way we would say that, what if you charged 1/10 of it and had 1,000 times more customers and you were 90% more profitable? So the way to think about that is you'd need a new platform. So you literally couldn't do it with physical people who had to help you with your back problems, right? So the job under that case is to optimize my physical health. And so what can you do to actually offer a service that might prevent people from having to go to the chiropractor? And that's where you could start to say, well, is there, a software application we would build? What would that application do? What are the main causes that put people in chiropractors' offices? I'm sure mine was, sitting at a computer hunched over typing stuff all day, right? I'm absolutely sure that was it, right?
Exactly.
So there's once you start thinking about that, okay, I need to optimize someone's physical back health. There's an enormous opportunity that opens up because you no longer think of the market as chiropractic business, right? Just like you don't think of the market as the iPod, because that literally went to zero. So if you could then build a solution after you understand the customer's problem, that's where you have a high probability of success. Because if you said, oh, what's the problem that's leading people to chiropractors, you could say, okay, well, we need to figure out that. And then whether the solution is, a stand-up desk or an application, or there's like literally an infinite number of, solutions you could come up with. And the reason that that's important, back to Jess, your question, is that tells you what to say no to. If there's not an opportunity for optimizing physical health in Kelly's chiropractic case, then say no to that. Pick another market. Go after a different job that people are trying to solve. But if there is a big market, a big segment, and people willing to pay, and you can think of a new platform, that's why industries change. That's why we see products and services change at an accelerating rate, because this phenomenon is happening. People are using technology in new ways to come up with different solutions to solve people's problems.
And so with all this information that we're talking about today, you came with a plan. Each of you came with this, well, here's where we're at. Here's where we're going to end. We're going to enter Q4. And here's kind of where we're going forward within our role, as well as within our organizations. So what are the kinds of questions that you're putting together now to finish out the year the way you want to, whether that's adjusting to get back on track, or, knowing that you're on track and you want to expand something, as well as that setup for into this next year and further along?
I personally, and it's not even, Q4 going to the new year, it's a constant question. It's just how can I improve? How can I improve? What can I do to make my business better? What can I learn? What can I put into my systems to help my clients improve their businesses? I'm always looking for improvement. I always think of myself personally and then my business as the best is yet to come. So that's just my mindset and mentality to always press forward, continue to learn. I've learned already from this podcast. This has been tremendous. So thanks to Jay and Luke. But again, just to have that mentality moving forward, I think a lot of businesses get away from that, and it can get them into trouble. And this is something I clarify with my clients is, let's not wait to Q4 to anticipate and to prepare for the next year. Why don't we take time in Q1 and Q2 and Q3 to step back? Let's have a meeting. Let's look at what's going on. How can we improve right now? What little things can we do to move forward more intelligently, to better serve, to make our business better, whatever the case may be. And so, again, that's just how I go about my business personally, and within my business, and then also teach my clients.
Yeah, great. Luke, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll pile in there. There's a couple of things, and I'm strategic planning. Kelly, you kind of hit on it. There is nothing that I'm going to change in Q4 today. It's gone. I'm going to see the results of Q4 about what we put in Q1 or Q2 of this year, depending on the lead cycles of your business. But here's a couple of the things these are just the questions that I'm asking right now. So I'm a big fan of the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Gino Wickman, Traction. I think, Jess, you're a fan of that. So a lot of the foundations of the way that we run our businesses are off of EOS, and then we add some components to that for the way that we do ours, specific for operation delivery and sales and marketing components. I wrote them down in my book. So here's the 4 questions that I'm asking. And I truly do believe that the quality of your life can be determined by the quality of the questions that you ask. And here's the first question is, what is the greatest opportunity? And just to get quiet for a second, what is the greatest opportunity facing your business today? What's interesting about that is that it changes. And and it changes because my box is bigger, right? When I think about it, can my business become $100 million business, $1 billion business? I've got some constraints around it that says that, but it also may be my emotional state surrounding. I don't want $1 billion business, right? For whatever reason, I'm happy with a $10 million, $100 million business. So the first was, what's the greatest opportunity facing the business? The second two are very similar. What do we need to do more of? And that kind of goes back to the original component of this, and what do we need to do less of? And if we can outline that from a corporate standpoint of what specific actions should go away, and then where can we reallocate that energy to something that's more beneficial? And then the last component, so that was 2 and 3, is what do we need to do more of, what do we need to do less of, is being critical in our business to identify what constraints exist inside our business. So if I were to step back up to the 30,000 foot view and look down at my business and say, what constraints are keeping that thing in place? I want to start chopping those strings away to remove those constraints and allocate resources appropriately inside the business to unconstrain the business growth.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would agree with Luke in a lot of that too. And then I would categorize things in terms of tactics and strategy. So if you're looking at what you're going to do in Q4, that's a tactical question. You know, what deals do you have in your pipeline? What's the probability of those deals going to close? Can you move those forward to get them closed faster? You know, that's a sales tactic question, which is, you know, super and critical, and getting those sales operations and efficiency running really well is really critical. And there are a lot of tools to do that, of course, you know, from Salesforce to HubSpot to, you know, et cetera. There's a bunch of stuff out there that's really great, and it's kind of mature part of the market. So that tactical question stuff, I think, is really important and always being focused on, because it is like, are you going to close these deals, you know, this revenue in this quarter? But then when you get to the strategy side, that's where asking the question, what is the confidence level that you have that your roadmap is going to turn into accelerated growth? And if you asked, you know, everybody at the company, the CEO, down to product managers and developers, engineers, you know, et cetera, like, what is the probability? Do you have really high confidence, medium confidence, or low confidence that your roadmap is on a path to accelerate your growth? And that's a strategy question, because strategy basically is knowing who your customer is, knowing what their job is, and then picking the platform to satisfy their needs better than your competitors in the market. And that's really, you know, Microsoft made a strategy mistake with the Zune. They were trying to hit their quarterly numbers, but then they were strategically investing in this new idea of an MP3 player with a hard drive connected to your computer. That was a terrible mistake because it was the wrong platform. Those kind of strategy questions are also essential to bring up, because if teams don't have high confidence in their product roadmaps ability to turn into accelerated revenue growth, it's likely not going to end well. And that's the risk that you want to mitigate.
Just there's something, Jay, it's interesting, you know, I don't want the listeners to be like, oh, we should all be risk averse. You know, we're going to lose $300 million. It's interesting, you know, in the Zune is Microsoft didn't go out of business, and they had the capital to spend, which just meant that they could take more calculated risks. And when we look in our own businesses, is we should be, as business owners, we should be constantly challenging the status quo and looking for those places that we can apply new resources. And, you know, Jay, you started the conversation by saying, thinking about the product roadmap, unless you had the one that, you know, was your goldmine product and you were going to take that thing to infinity, is we should be challenging it. We should be thinking about the new opportunities facing our business, and then taking a calculated risk. So $300 million, I probably can't afford to lose $300 million, but 30,000, 300,000, 3 million, it depends on the size of your business about what you could lose. But the potential upside for the Zune was obviously, it was pretty high for them at the time.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is the way that we like to think about risk is, and I know, you know, we all live in the US, and this, you know, swashbuckling risk-taking entrepreneur is this, you know, great image. I would say think about it a little bit differently, which is mitigate risk. That the best entrepreneurs in the world and the best executives and companies mitigate as much risk as possible. No one actually wants to take risk. If you take risk and you get over it and you didn't encounter the risk, that's great, but that's literally playing Russian roulette. And we don't want to do that. What you want to do is mitigate risk as much as possible. And the reason this stuff is so important is because you do it really all on the upfront side before you make the investment in product development, marketing, and sales. And one of my favorite quotes that demonstrates this is from the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. And he said, "You can fix it here in the drafting room with an eraser, or you can fix it on a construction site with a sledgehammer." And that summarizes all of what this activity is you're trying to do it to change it in the eraser, version. It's much less expensive. And you will then, hopefully mitigate as much of that risk as possible. You can't eliminate risk, right? It's life, but you do want to mitigate as much as possible.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts as we are wrapping up our time together today in this live stream? I'll tell you what, the minutes flew by. And so anything that didn't get said or that you didn't really have an appropriate place for, but that pertains to this conversation to keep us asking better questions, to keep us curious about what we have coming up, what we're working on.
Well, the one thing I'll just close with one thing that I think we have a very common theme between Luke, Kelly, and me is this idea of customer centricity, of really putting your customer first. If you're looking at expanding your box, as Luke said, or if you're looking at just incredible service, as Kelly's focused on, you really want to put your customer at the center of all of your activities, because without customers, you don't exist. Businesses don't, they're not a theoretical entity. You got to generate revenue and profitability, and that comes from your customers. So if nothing else, really focusing on your customer and their problems independent of your current solutions. That's what I think is important too, is to always be thinking about what do your current products and services do for them, and always improve those. But then remember, they have goals that are independent of your solution, and that if you can put that customer front and center of all the activities of your company, then you'll likely be on a path to success.
I'll add just one thing here, then we'll turn it over to Kelly to kind of put some closing thoughts in there. Is that, and I think it's really interesting to see the dynamics of this group as when you think about products and service and customer services. The goal as a business owner for the majority of business owners is not to hit the home run. We can win Super Bowls if we can get 3 yards every time. We can be World Series champs with base hits every single time. We would be in the Hall of Fame if we could get a base hit 1/3 of the time. We would probably be in the Hall of Fame, right? So the business owners, our objective is not for home runs. It's, mine's not. I'll tell you that mine is a series of base hits. And if I can beat the market, if my competitors are growing at 25%, 30%, 50%, and I can grow at 100% year on year, then I'm doing the right things in my businesses to remove constraints, create good customer service, have a strong product portfolio and lineup. And that's the encouragement that I would offer is, if you just listen to this for 48 minutes and 17 seconds, is find the thing that you can do in your business that's going to have the biggest impact, and then swing for a base hit.
And I agree. And I'll piggyback off and circle back to something we already talked about, is that consistency. And from my standpoint, working with businesses, it's not doing the grand gestures. It's not trying to hit the home run. It's not trying to throw the 90-yard pass, to use your analogy, Luke. It's to do the simple things consistently on the customer service side of things, to create that service that all you're doing is making a customer feel valuable and important and special. You make them feel like, hey, you are there for them, whether it's providing great product, whether it's the service you provide, it's that emotional aspect of helping them feel important, those type of things. It's just doing those simple things on a daily basis in a consistent manner that really, and I've lived it and my clients are living it, that I've seen that's what really moves a business forward and to ultimately hit that home run. It's the little things done on a daily basis that makes the biggest difference.
You heard it here. We're talking about growth from the inside out on the Bold Business Podcast. Thanks for joining into this live stream. Stay tuned. The podcast that features these wonderful gentlemen and more of their views about growth from the inside will be out later this month. Until then,